Hello, my name is Joseph Cathey, and I'm the founder of Capital Interactive, an XR development agency that creates immersive educational experiences based out of Washington, D.C. I'm honored to be here today, moderating and sharing our virtual stage with three XR innovators. They're doing groundbreaking work in the industry. The work that these individuals will share with you today is truly special. And for me personally, hearing about and experiencing their work leaves me with that same sense of awe and excitement as the feeling I had when I first tried augmented reality just a few short years ago. And looking back to that time, just 5 or 6 years ago when augmented reality was really just getting started, it's inspiring to see how far we've come. Theoretical ideas and plans are no longer that. Today we have fully developed applications and experiences that educate, experiences that inspire, and experiences that are shared with loved ones because they really mean something to the people that are interacting with them. Today, we'll be hearing presentations from each of our three incredible panelists about their experiences working with augmented reality and how they approach curating digitized assets. At the end of our presentations, we'll have a short Q&A, and time permitting, we'll take a few questions from our audience. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So first up, we have Erin Blasco. Erin is the social media strategist in the Smithsonian Central Office of Public Affairs. Erin develops strategies that engage and educate the Smithsonian's digital audiences through social media. And most recently, Erin led a team in creating social-first augmented reality experiences for Instagram. Next up, we have Robin Morey. Robin is the program coordinator for the Latino Museum Studies program at Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Latino, a new program designed to increase access to museum careers for Latino identifying students. Robin spent 3 years as the curatorial assistant for the exhibition Play Ball at the National Museum of American History, where she played a key role in the curation of a fully bilingual 3D online gallery. And finally, we have Elizabeth Barelli. Elizabeth is the head of product marketing, 3D and AR at Adobe. Elizabeth spends her spare time in her art studio advising organizations on the subject of art and design and philosophizing on the future of technology. Recently, Elizabeth and her team partnered with the Smithsonian Institution and the Hydrus to create an award-winning immersive AR reef application to educate viewers on coral reef ecosystems. So with that, we're going to switch over to presentations, and then we'll go back to Q&A following all three presentations. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Morey, and I currently work at the new National Museum of the American Latino, but I spent the past 3 years working as a curatorial assistant at the National Museum of American History, where we recently opened Play Ball. So I'm going to start with a brief overview of the Play Ball exhibition and then dive into our exciting use of AR. So Play Ball in the barrios and the big leagues, en los barrios y en las grandes ligas, is a fully bilingual exhibition exploring how Latinas and Latinos have changed American society through the lens of baseball. The exhibition focuses primarily on community stories, examining how Latinas and Latinos have used baseball to challenge prejudice, build community, and make a better life for themselves and their families. In 2015, curator Margaret Salazar-Porcio, curator of Latinx history, at the National Museum of American History, brought together scholars from around the country already working on the topic of Latinos and baseball. Together, they saw a critical mass of interest and enthusiasm to document, preserve, and display the incredible ways baseball provides a gateway to explore many subjects important to the Latino community, like immigration, labor rights, and issues around race and ethnicity. So now, as a result, we have 2 exhibits, one in Washington, D.C., and one that travels around the country. Gathering stories and objects for the exhibition was a very rewarding experience. The Play Ball project partnered with more than 30 local institutions in 14 states across the country, in Washington, D.C., and in Puerto Rico, to hold community collecting events, where members of the community came together to share their baseball memories. And many of the photos and objects shared at these collecting events are now housed by these local institutions, and some were collected by the Smithsonian to be preserved as part of the national collection. So now I want to explain a little bit how we began to experiment in the world of AR. So the Playable exhibition team partnered with the Smithsonian Digitization Program Office, the DPO, who are hosting this conference. And in 2018, we did a proof of concept test, which is one object pictured here at the top left. We call this the Peacekeeper Bat. So we did this proof of concept test so that we could better understand the process behind the 3D scanning and all of the potential capabilities of the 3D models. For this first capture, the team from the DPO did all the scans by hand, and their office also took care of the processing on the back end and the rendering of the images. And this resulted in an interactive 3D model pictured here on the bottom left, which we were able to pair with supplementary historical and cultural information, as well as accompanying photographs and other digital content. And the Smithsonian's 3D viewer platform, Voyager, is a really fantastic resource in that it allows us to highlight important physical features of the artifact, things like the materials that it's made of. And once we had this 3D model, we were able to create a 2-scale 3D print of the Peacekeeper Bat. So that's it here on the table in the center photo. And this has been a really unexpected sort of bonus for us in this process, because we're able to take this 3D print to presentations and events outside of the museum, which we would never be able to do with a museum artifact. So this has been a really great way for us to introduce stories and themes of the exhibition to people outside of the museum. And now we're beginning to experiment with augmented reality capabilities of these 3D models, which I'll explain more in just a little bit. But here I did a little photo shoot with my neighbor. He's a big baseball fan, and here he is with the AR Peacekeeper Bat, ready to hit a home run. So because we were so happy with the proof of concept test, we went ahead and selected 16 signature objects to be scanned for the 3D collection. Choosing which objects to include was really an interesting process, because obviously we wanted to choose key representative stories from the exhibition, but we also had to consider the capabilities and the challenges of the 3D capture itself. So we learned a lot from the DPO about what kinds of objects are ideal for scanning and which are not. And this project actually served as another sort of concept test for the DPO as well, because we selected several textile objects, jerseys, Letterman jackets, things like that, which is also sort of a new challenge for the scanning equipment. So it took us 1 week to capture all 16 objects. And as you can see, space was another challenging factor. We needed a large open space to do all the scanning, so that there's room for all the lighting and all the equipment, and the techs can make sure that they're able to have access all around the entire object. So our first venture into the world of augmented reality was with a partnership between the Smithsonian DPO and Verizon 5G Labs. These two AR experiences, this is Roberto Clemente's batting helmet and his jersey. These two AR experiences were presented during last year's CES conference keynote speech. And the immersive experience allows viewers to see these objects in their own space alongside a brief label describing the artifact. And these experiences also feature English and Spanish narration, which provides a deeper story of the object and greater accessibility. So back to the gallery for just a moment. Here is a case from the Playable exhibition at American History in Washington, DC. This ball on the left, or enlarged on the right here, excuse me, is signed by the 1953 Chicago White Sox, including Cuban star Minnie Minoso. So the text I've included on the slide here is all the text we had space for on the object label in the gallery. And within the case itself, we had the ball mounted so that you could see Minoso's signature, but not many of the others. So clearly, we're somewhat limited by the constraints of the word counts, the configuration of the space in the gallery exhibition. But here is a 3D image of the ball in the Smithsonian's 3D viewer, Voyager. As you can see, the ball is beautifully rendered, and the platform allows us to include in-depth historical and cultural context, photos, and we're also able to highlight specific features of the ball. We're able to show exactly where Miñoso's signature is. We can highlight what materials it's made of, more information about the season, the 1953 season. And so this is all like really exciting information that we couldn't include in the actual in-person gallery. And the platform is also great because it has multilingual functionality, which allows us to include all of this information in Spanish as well. So, yep, here's everything again in Spanish. And I wish I could show this in the context of the gallery, but you know, COVID, I'm here in my home, but here is the same ball in augmented reality. So viewers can see the ball to scale in their own space. They can rotate it, look at it from different angles, explore the other autographs. So it's really great. And this is a huge benefit because you could come to the museum and see this actual object in the gallery, and you still might not get as full of an experience as you can with this AR experience. So I want to go back to the community partnerships for just a moment, which are the foundation of the Playbowl project. So these are some photos from the first venue, which hosted the traveling exhibition in Saginaw, Michigan. This is a banner exhibition, which is enriched with fantastic local stories, photographs, and objects. And these local institutions are using the traveling exhibition to showcase their own stories. So the traveling version of the exhibition will be touring to 15 cities across the country, many of which previously hosted community collecting events and contributed artifacts to the Playbowl exhibition and to the national collection. So here is one of the banners from the Playbowl traveling exhibition. So there are 20 banners, they're about 8 feet tall, and the traveling exhibition will not display actual objects from the Smithsonian collection. But each banner will feature a couple of images of these national treasures accompanied by a QR code. So when visitors scan the QR code, they're brought to the 3D virtual gallery where they can explore our collection of 3D models and play with the AR experiences. So this is very important to us in terms of accessibility because this has been a community project from the start, and we wanted to make sure that these artifacts, these objects are accessible to our community collaborators. So, you know, for those who donated their family's objects to the collection, they're able to still see and interact with these objects through the AR experiences, even though the actual artifact will be preserved in the national collection at the museum. And the AR objects are available to those who can never even come to our museum here in Washington, DC. And as I touched on earlier with the interactive 3D models, the 3D printing capabilities, the AR functionality, there is a lot more potential for researchers and for educators to really interact with and to really engage with these objects in ways that really wouldn't be possible otherwise. So we're very happy that this technology is available to make Smithsonian collections more accessible to the public. And now with our open access policies and with the social media, there's so much more reach. And this is just a way that we are extending the experience. So thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth. I lead product marketing at Adobe. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about our partnership with the Smithsonian Museum and the Hydrus, and really think about how the experience of the museum can be extended beyond thanks to augmented reality. So before I jump into this fabulous story and experience that we had last year, working all together on a little piece of innovation, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the augmented reality business landscape, how the space is evolving, and where we fit as Adobe as a company. So first of all, AR today, it's really important to look at some consumer data and understand that there's undeniable traction towards this medium. Over 30% of the population in the United States is consuming AR, and about 10% of those people are using it every day. We also know that about 64% of AR users are under 34 years old. So that really means that there is a huge generational gap, and this is definitely a newer medium and newer space that we're still exploring. We also know that there's about 1 billion experiences delivered every day, and that happens mostly through social media networks, and that also leads to billions of dollars of advertising revenue. So it is definitely where digital media is increasing, growing fast, and we're going to continue to see a lot of changes in this space. Let's think about how AR will continue to develop tomorrow and transform this digital media space. For once, it's much more of an engaging medium than other types of digital media that we've seen, such as video or just simply display banner. And that is because as a medium, it requires engagement, interactivity, and action from users. And therefore, it creates a much more deep relationship from the beginning, and a lot more rewards also for the user who experience that augmented reality. It can really leave them transformed and change their mind in much more different ways. And we're seeing AR also often being associated to a gamified environment. And that is also why, as a more playful medium, it has a lot of success. It's also a way to integrate the web in the physical world. If you think about it, we have the internet, which is this very abstract, notion and network of information. And thanks to augmented reality, we're going to be able to anchor that information in the physical world and associate this digital layer to the geography of our planet, which makes it really exciting and opens up for a lot of use cases and a lot of ways that you could use augmented reality. On top of that, if you look way ahead, we have the horizon of augmented reality headsets, XR experiences, and obviously all the conversations around the metaverses that are starting to emerge, even though we don't fully know exactly what that's going to look like. So to summarize, AR is happening. It's not something that, is going to come in 10 years. It's already happening today. It's just happening through baby steps with cell phones mostly, and we're very excited to see where this medium continues to grow. Just to paint a little bit the picture around how to create an AR experience today, because from the Adobe's perspective, we all, of course, always think about the creator first and what tools exist out there to enable more of these experiences. And so you have on the one side, game engines, like companies like Unity or Unreal, that provide tools that are very deep, very rich, enable a lot of customization, a lot of precision, a lot of power, but they're also very steep learning curve. They're mostly coding-based, programming-based, and they're not for everybody. Although they are getting lots of traction, we're seeing that it is definitely a hurdle for a lot of people to get in to create these experiences. That might be really costly as well. You have to hire specific experts. It might take time. You might have to develop a specific app to be able to preview the experience. So it's not necessarily the most seamless entry point today for AR, although it's definitely a well-established solution. On the other side, you have social networks like Facebook, Snapchat, and probably soon TikTok will also have, an AR tool that will enable their community to create, filters, experiences that they can be delivered through these networks. What's really interesting is that although the network can be a huge advantage for them, for the experience to be shared very quickly through people's networks, these companies are also walled gardens, meaning that you have to create the experience specifically for that network. So a creator would have to create one experience multiple times to be able to share it through all of these platforms. And we know that, again, there are generations that are using different networks at different times. It's also important to note that some of these tools have different capabilities and enable different types of AR experiences. Today, we've obviously seen a lot of facial filters, try-ons, or simple product visualization, which can be very popular, especially through the use of a mobile phone. But when it comes to creating more robust or interactive storytelling, these tools don't always totally provide all of the freedom and creative customization that might be required. So with that landscape in mind, where does Adobe fit and what are we trying to do? Our mission is really to democratize creativity. And if you think about what Adobe has done with Photoshop, we're trying to do something very similar with Adobe Aero, our AR solution. And we want to be able to provide a more holistic access to AR so that creators can create an experience once and publish it everywhere through multiple platforms. So we're really thinking about the connectedness of the tool and the way the experience could be more interoperable throughout the different networks. So let me talk to you a little bit more about Adobe Aero, which is a product that we launched about 4 years ago now, and that has evolved quite a bit. And that is the tool that we've been using to create this experience with the Smithsonian, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. Adobe Aero enables creatives to tell interactive stories in the real world, no coding required. This is a really important piece, and we really wanted to make sure that there was an intuitive aspect to the tool so that what you see is what you get, and you can create in real-time experiences. So I wanted to share some examples of our creative community and all the diverse types of artwork that they can create with Aero, just to give you a more visual inspiration of what is possible today. All right, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're inspired to see more, definitely feel free to check out some of our social channels on Instagram, especially. We're always sharing artwork from our community and also partners. So lots of inspiration over there as well, and constantly trying to experiment with new ways to use the tool. So really quickly about the positioning of this tool, because our whole mission is to enable anybody creative to use this and prototype something in AR and then bring it to life and share it with users. The positioning is very simple, and I'd also like to share that the tool is free, so feel free to download the application on iOS, and we also have a desktop app that you can try that works cross-functionally. So we wanted to make this tool approachable. Again, no coding required, with a lot of intuitive aspect to enable more visualization of what you're creating and more interactive behaviors that can be integrated into an experience without having to over-complexify how that happens. At the same time, we wanted the tool to be deep and powerful and enable robust multimedia experiences, like really the best in class, creators tool if you wanted to create like creative AR experiences. So you are able to bring in assets that you've designed in other 3D apps or even 2D apps, and you're able to really position them the way you want and create animations, create interactive behaviors, and really build your story with the simple tool that we have. So a lot of customization is possible. And lastly, we wanted the tool to be connected. And again, for Adobe, interoperability is really an important piece, because we have this ecosystem of products, creative products, and we want to make sure that users can find ways to cross-pollinate all of their artwork and bring digital things into the physical world, augment the physical world with some of their digital creation. So being able to bring something into AR, which was not always a seamless process, we've tried to really simplify that and make it easy for users to just bring their assets in. And then at the same time, we're hoping to develop a tool that will be cross-platform, that can work on multiple devices, multiple operating systems. And at the same time, today, even though you have to download Aero to be able to view an experience, it is our one top priority to enable a system where viewers that you share your experience with wouldn't even have to download the app, to remove any friction at that point. So we have a lot of ambition and a lot more coming in the next few years. So definitely feel free to follow and be part of this journey with us. So now I want to move on and talk a little bit more about this super innovative partnership that we were lucky to develop last year with the Smithsonian team and the Hydrus, which is a nonprofit in the space of marine biology. And I want to tell you a little bit more about how we built that experience, but first I want to make sure you understand the whole concept and how this is precisely doing the work of extending the AR museum experience beyond a physical location, beyond the actual building of the museum, so that more people can enjoy the AR experience. And I think with the last few years that we've all experienced in the pandemic, it was really the perfect opportunity for us to test how we can really empower museums to have a much broader reach and bring sophisticated artifacts, artwork, educational experiences into the home of the people who want to follow along. So I'll just share a quick video that actually summarizes the entire concept of this partnership. And I think you'll really understand the opportunity and the use case specifically of using AR in the context of an immersive experience.
What is a museum? Is it simply a collection of artifacts? What if museums were everywhere for everyone? How can we redefine the meaning and power of a museum?
When we 3D scan an object like a coral, we're capturing the three-dimensional properties, the geometry, the physicality of that object. I think it's an incredibly powerful technology that allows us to bring these Smithsonian objects into your living room, into your backyard, into your classroom. We're starting this partnership between the Smithsonian, the Hydrus, and Adobe, focusing on coral reefs. Our goal is to figure out ways to leverage 3D scanning and augmented reality technology to unlock all of that collection. I think the power of AR is that it can bring museum collections into your pocket through your phone, and that phone becomes a portal into another world.
In 2020, the Hydrus and the Smithsonian embarked on a collaborative project called Coral Collections. This was a way to bring accessibility and visibility to coral specimens housed at the Smithsonian. The Hydrus is able to create the sort of storytelling aspect. Why do we want to care about these environments? The Smithsonian is able to actually provide the physical models because they have this incredible collection. And then Adobe is able to create this really beautiful, artistic, immersive experience that really resonates with people.
When you're building augmented reality experiences, many times you need tools to create realistic materials, 3D models, and so we have a whole set of tools at Adobe with the Substance 3D suite as well as Adobe Aero that can help you really create these very photorealistic experiences and bring them to life.
It's really important to bring these kinds of experiences to people because it helps promote empathy and understanding of marine environments and what they're facing right now.
I think augmented reality really allows museums to reimagine and reinvent themselves because it ultimately allows them to expand how the audience can immerse and experience all the artifacts, the history and the culture that they already have.
We have over 155 million objects and specimens, and less than 1% of those objects can ever be on physical display. This technology allows the viewer or the public to draw their own narrative or to create their own stories and allow these objects to have many new chapters going into the future.
All right, so thank you very much for watching this. As you can see, it was a really powerful project, and it raised a lot of awareness. It was actually endorsed by the United Nations also last year, so we were really proud of this accomplishment. If there's one thing to remember about AR is that it has the power to bring people, to immerse them into an environment that they would have never had access to previously, such as being scuba diving at the bottom of the ocean. It was really great to see how we could explore that creatively, how we could add animals, how we could add a whole bunch of transformation onto the actual artifact that would not have been possible to display with the real coral in the window of a museum, for example. So there's definitely lots of opportunity and things to unlock with this medium that I highly encourage everybody to think about. In terms of key takeaways, because I think we also had a lot of learnings in the context of developing this experience, I would just summarize it to 3 points. Number one, having passionate teams and having people who are passionate about trying new things, taking risks, and diving deeper literally into a new medium is really important, because AR can be hard. It is a new emerging medium, so it's not totally perfect, it's not totally developed. There's still a lot of open questions, but it is completely worth it. And the amount of feedback and positive reaction we've had with this experience has been great, especially from a qualitative perspective, because a lot of people didn't necessarily understand exactly why AR and what would AR add to a meaningful museum experience, because we're so used to seeing AR being associated with e-commerce or being able to just change somebody's face, when really there's so many potential things to unlock. Also, I would recommend to really have a curious beginner mind when developing this, because there will be a lot of experimentation and a lot of unknowns, and it's also okay to have something that is a little bit imperfect. Actually, we've had a lot of great reaction from users and from people who are, I think, much more tolerant to what they're seeing, because what they really want to do is experience something new, and they understand that this is a medium that is still evolving and that not everything has been solved. And so it's okay to try these new things and these new medium, even if things are constantly changing and not necessarily like checking all the boxes. Last, there's definitely lots of limitation in this medium, like things are developing fast, but at the same time, slowly from another perspective. And so it's really important to stay patient and to understand that innovation, comes with trying and comes with a lot of hurdles on the way. Potentially, when you think about scale and think about distributing that experience to a very large number of people, you might run into some new constraint that you hadn't thought about. Like, is this possible to distribute throughout the world? Like, there was definitely a lot of learnings for us on that side, but we were still super grateful and happy about the outcome, and it still reached out a lot more people than maybe the museum could have reached to in its physical location. And there's something so powerful and poetic to think about how all the content that exists in a museum can be digitized and accessible beyond borders and beyond frontiers. So with that, I'd love to just wrap up, and thanks everybody for listening. And I also want to share a special thank you to the Smithsonian team who worked with us on this. Yap Otter, Vince Rossi, Erin, Blasco, who's also on this panel, because it was a great experience, and it enabled us to learn a lot and to constantly improve our products and build better solutions for users. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Blasco. I am the Smithsonian Social Media Strategist in the Office of Public Affairs. And today I'm going to share with you the story of launching 10 3D augmented reality effects on the Smithsonian's Instagram. I want to share what we learned that might help you, as well as whether I would do it again. So for this project, we had a team led by the Central Office of Public Affairs, where I sit. Working together, we had 5 Smithsonian museums, the amazing Smithsonian 3D team, who is the team that created these effects in the first place, or these 3D assets in the first place. We had Facebook/Instagram itself, and then their contractor who helped transform these existing 3D assets into effects that would work on the Instagram platform. Our goals were to motivate Instagram audiences to try these effects. When you're on Instagram, you don't want to leave. You want to keep scrolling. So come to a website to see 3D things. That's just not compelling enough. You're going to stay on Instagram. So we wanted to bring these effects to Instagram right on that platform. And then this also meant that instead of just viewing the effects, the audiences were able to use all the social components of Instagram. So they could share photos and videos on their main feed, their story, wherever they wanted. It was also important to me just to make sure people know that we have these 3D effects. They're all part of Smithsonian Open Access. So this was kind of an extension of that Open Access project. So I want to quickly show you what the effects looked like. These are the little demo videos Instagram users see when they're browsing the effects to try. Sort of like a little ad for your effect. So a pro tip that I have for you is in your timeline, build in time after your effects are finalized, but before you launch to go record these. I did it on a freezing day on the National Mall. And as someone with 0 camera skills, it was really challenging to record these, but I really wanted to make sure we had Smithsonian museums there to kind of brand these as Smithsonian. And fun fact, the orange airplane on the right had a slightly older demographic that watched that one than the others, which I just find very interesting. So the cabbage-like object in the middle is a hat. And you can actually try it on in selfie mode. It's by an amazing African-American designer. I was too shy to show my selfie in this video, so I think that didn't do the effect justice because it just doesn't work that well as a sort of a hat on the ground. So when you're making selfie effects, really consider sort of who you'll have modeling them. And fun fact, more women tried the hat than men, according to Instagram. So we did build some special things into these effects beyond what's available on our 3D website. The shuttle plays some NASA audio of a real launch.
1, booster ignition, and the final liftoff of Discovery.
You get the idea. In retrospect, I wish that the user got to trigger that sound effect in some way versus it playing on its own. I think that would have been a little bit more interactive. This one also has sounds. This is one of the less iconic objects. It's a telegraph key. I wanted our Smithsonian effects to really benefit from Smithsonian expertise and access to collections. So I sent a curator into our collections during COVID to record authentic Morse code tapping sounds. I do not think our audience noticed that. And I think in the future, I would think harder about what objects will really entice Instagram users. So one of our most popular effects was this mammoth. It's big, iconic, surprising. It really got Instagram users curious. In selfie mode, when you move your head, it moves its head. We had to watch elephant video footage to get this right. And then over on the right are boots from The Wiz. And again, users couldn't trigger them to dance. They were just always dancing. But I thought that was a really fun effect. So we launched these in December 2020. So here's the metrics since that time. One thing you can see right away is that although a lot of people were exposed to the effects, very few times were those effects shared on Instagram. And I think that speaks to the very high bar that there is for shareability. People share things because they're amazing, not because they're kind of neat or informative. Things you share really say something about who you are. They have to be experiences that really move you. So before doing a project like this, I really recommend thinking through, so what would motivate an audience member to share this, and then maximize for that sharing, if sharing is important to your team. So for launch, we highlighted the effects on our main feed on Instagram in this little Instagram story as well. The Secretary of the Smithsonian shared a Twitter thread highlighting the effects. That generated a lot of positive responses from people who didn't realize the Smithsonian objects like exist in 3D. So did people leave Twitter to go to Instagram to see these? I'm not sure, but it did increase visibility. It got a lot of good responses. We also worked really closely with Facebook to do some press outreach, which was really great. And then through our Facebook collaboration, a few of the big Instagram accounts that Instagram controls highlighted the effects and increased awareness about them. So in future campaigns, that was really successful. And in future campaigns, I would definitely build in more of an influencer creator outreach plan into this and really get some good user-generated content to spark interest in sharing. You can't just hope that influencers will share things. You have to build those relationships and that budget. So let's move on to lessons learned. One of the big things I learned is I did too much. I wanted to show the breadth of what the Smithsonian has to offer, science, culture, history, art, but users missed that for the most part. The mammoth was big, iconic, intriguing, and by far the most popular. So no other single effect captured this much of the attention, especially this much sharing. So we saw, this was around Christmas, so we saw, here's the mammoth with my Christmas tree, my holiday decorations, and a lot of like, here's the mammoth with my dog. So find your mammoth. The other thing is Facebook was really motivated to highlight the world camera, the outward facing camera rather than the selfie camera. So a lot of people in 2020 knew that you could do selfie effects like beauty filters or little cat ears, but world effects were intriguing because much of the world was closed. Travel was kind of off the table. So Facebook loved this idea that you could like explore the world through Instagram effects. To me, I thought this was more of an incidental choice. Should it be a world effect, a selfie effect? Who cares? It's a 3D thing on Instagram. It turns out that that is so critical. It really affects shareability. So what would motivate you to share a world effect? Usually putting it on your pet, that's my cat. But you kind of have to show your living room, your backyard, your personal space. A video of a world effect in action just doesn't have that like, wow, I have to show my friends kind of power unless you really build that in and make the experience really special. So for me, I really wanted our audiences to see these objects right there on Instagram, but was I really maximizing the social quality of Instagram? Maybe not fully. So you also have to be realistic about what Instagram users are doing with effects. When you're scrolling TikTok or Reels or talking to friends on Snapchat, you might see a lot of filters being used. In my corner of vertical video, it's beauty filters and absolutely absurd filters like the potato head. You aren't seeing people record viral videos wearing a historic hat or hanging out with the Space Shuttle Discovery. That just isn't happening. The exception might be pets. You might use world effects on or nearby pets, but you do have to be realistic about sort of what audiences are doing with these effects.
Here's a potato, but look at my cat is a potato.
Okay. So the leverage your pets thing, let's talk about that. You have to leverage something. You have to make your launch a big moment. So can it be make the mammoth meet your mammals? Where will the mammoth travel next? Can you challenge audiences to be part of like a fashion show with your effects? Bring in a challenge, a contest, some kind of activation that helps identify the why behind why would I share this? I just don't think, wow, this was informative is enough to really merit sharing. People want to signal something about themselves when they share. They're sharing identity building, laugh-inducing, truly social experiences that connect them with their friends, not educational content. And then this graph that you see here, this shows opens of the effects, all of them, at launch. And you can see that once we switched off promotion, there was way less discoverability and way less use. So our shoes danced, our space shuttle had an audio track from NASA, our telegraph key clicked, our mammoth had a selfie mode where you could make its head nod. I couldn't make the saxophone play because I didn't want to figure out music licensing, but aside from the mammoth, very few of these extras were triggered by the user. They just happened. Now that I watch my 4-year-old, she does selfie effects all the time. And she is just so joyful when something she does triggers the effect to do something cool. So a lot of effects, you open your mouth and something cool happens. You raise your eyebrows and something cool happens. I think that makes it more social, more interactive, and maybe more shareable. It's more of an experience you engage in rather than just view. So I wish I had more of these opportunities to put users in the driver's seat. So I was really motivated to make these educational. I wanted our audiences to get some Smithsonian expertise to set these apart from other dinosaur effects available on Instagram. So I made the choice that we should use these annotations. I think they might have been more of a headache than a value to audiences. They were kind of hard to see. They didn't really fit on your screen. You've got this screen and you're having to read sentences like this. It felt like information, not an experience. So this was not really a delightful way to share Smithsonian knowledge. Probably also has a lot of accessibility challenges. But there are ways that you can build in some interpretation. I think audio can be powerful to introduce your effect, especially if you're seeing something beautiful while you're hearing the audio. If those sync up really well, it can be nice. To me, this one feels a little bit more immersive.
Great Smokies are home to synchronous fireflies, the only species in America that can synchronize their flashing light pattern.
That one's from Nat Geo. So I might not share this, this one on my personal Instagram, but I might mention it to someone else. Hey, Nat Geo has this cool firefly thing or whatever, and give it some word of mouth.
It's smoky.
So one thing Facebook told us is that using your effect in your own organization's Instagram story can be really powerful. The New York Times often creates these Instagram effects that are basically like an infographic in an Instagram effect. And then they put them in their Instagram story and kind of do great journalism around it, kind of gives you a tour of it. We could have taken that same approach and held a Q&A with a dinosaur curator, giving a tour of a 3D fossil, and kind of bring those audiences into that experience. And that would have been a really creative way to sort of tell the story and showcase that expertise. By the way, right now, New York Times has an Instagram effect that shows you like how deep in your nose to stick the COVID test swab. So it might be kind of fun to think about like, how can you be useful to audiences in addition to just delighting them with fossils or spacesuits? So would I do it again? I am so grateful that I got to experiment with AR Instagram effects, and I'd love to explore more projects like this one. A few things that I would really want to see in a future project is I'd really want the Instagram effect experience to be part of a big, compelling moment, like a big, exciting moment that's inherently social, something you want to share with other people. I think NASA does this really, really well. Of course, their budget and the eye-catchingness of launching something into space is not necessarily within reach of most of us, but I think we can treat our museum moments in a more multi-touch way, where Instagram AR maybe plays a role and extends that audience experience, lets people immerse in it, follow its progress, try it on through a selfie, moments where people are really looking to be part of a celebration or learn more about it. That's where I can see us really leveraging this, bringing in that influencer campaign, having exhibits and programs that relate, not having the AR experience be the only thing. It should be part of a multi-touch package. So this is my last slide. These are kind of my lessons learned. Always put pets in your strategy, and just thank you for your time. We're looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Well, before we get into Q&A, I want to thank each of you for sharing your insight into your respective projects. Elizabeth, you mentioned something that really resonated with me earlier about this sort of evolving, imperfect nature of the technology. Along those lines, was there something you learned during testing or rollout of the coral reef experience that surprised you?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing that was really interesting was that, the coral reef is a very detailed artifact, right? It's a very, in its shape and its nature, that is a big, important piece of the experience is the actual 3D asset itself and object. And something to keep in mind is that, AR is still sort of evolving its capability to be able to render a very detailed and photorealistic and asset and all the texture and all the materials. So I think, we may have been a little bit ambitious at the beginning when we were thinking about like designing the concept of that experience. We worked it out and we added a lot of rich content around it to make it really powerful, but that's definitely something to keep in mind is AR as a medium has to deal with some constraints around like the level of like 3D rendering. And so thinking about, the asset that you want to bring into AR is probably like a good thing to do. Like I'm thinking about Robin, who used, a baseball bat, which is definitely a little bit more accessible in some ways than some of the most sophisticated artifact that you can find. So that was a big learning for us for sure.
That's great. Robin, there's actually a question here, speaking of the baseball experience, from an audience member. For Playball, what offices drove the creation of the 3D and AR experiences? Were these known components when you started creating content and raised funds?
Yes, that's actually something that was really special about this project is that we were planning on integrating these AR experiences from the start. We had a team which was more on the curatorial side at the National Museum of American History, and we worked closely with the Smithsonian Digitization Program Office. And what was the second part? Was there a question about funding? I just want to make sure I cover.
Yeah,
both halves of
so
it.
they asked, were these known components when you started creating, I guess, were the offices during creation known components when you started creating that content? And
Okay. Yeah, so we worked collaboratively with the DPO on this project. So we primarily worked on the curatorial side of things, and they did all of the like tech rendering, working through like developing the AR experiences. But I think it was a really strong collaboration. From our perspective, you know, often we're thinking about like, how can we put these gallery experiences online? But it's always sort of a one-for-one. And this gave us the opportunity to think bigger and like be a little bit more creative. And so going in, knowing that we were going to design the exhibition with the QR codes and things like that, that even helped us in our design of the in-person gallery, because, you know, as I mentioned in our presentation, we had constraints around, you know, what we can include in the space and things like that. And so we knew, you know, we would be able to include things in the AR gallery that we might not have in the in-person gallery. So we, you know, when we were selecting these objects, we thought, okay, which ones are going to be the most exciting and the most interesting to leverage this AR technology. So those were the ones that we chose to highlight for the AR gallery online. So it was really good to go with that mindset from the start, so that we're thinking not just about like, how do we translate what we have in the gallery to online or to social media or whatever, but you know, how can we complement the two?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, like taking content and then making it an augmented reality experience, it poses a lot of different challenges, and you know, sometimes stakeholders might not be totally on board. And so, you know, Erin, this is a question I want to ask for you. When you're talking about working with stakeholders and sort of getting them to adopt augmented reality and getting them to accomplish sort of these goals to do an augmented reality initiative, what's your elevator pitch to initiative? How do you get them to allocate the resources and the timing to be able to do a project like that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think for this particular project, it was that these assets existed in 3D already, and that, you know, we were motivated to make sure audiences were aware of them, could find them, but getting people to leave the social network that they're on is really hard. Like, I'll get a text while scrolling Instagram and just not read the text for a while, you know, like that's someone reaching out directly to me and I'm just not going to leave it. So I think that was a big motivation for people, was just understanding that audience behavior means, you know, we're not leaving. So bring this 3D content to us on the platform that we're on, personalize it, make it customizable, make it something they can interact with and share on the place that they're already spending, or maybe wasting, who knows, lots of their time. And I feel like that was very compelling, was that, you know, this project, we already had started this project. We already had these assets. We just hadn't thought about like, how can we bring them to Instagram? So I think that opportunity was just kind of like, I didn't have to have a great elevator pitch. It was just kind of too good to pass up. One part of my elevator pitch that I think I learned a lot from, and I think sharing your mistakes is really important in moments like these, is I asked the museums that participated in this, because we had 5 museums with all these 10 objects, you know, help me write these annotations, right? So that there could be this text, so that you weren't just looking at any old random Triceratops, you knew about that specific Triceratops or whatever, right? And that was an enormous amount of time. They had to go to their experts, their curators, get this information. They had to condense it down into this really short pieces. And I wanted that so that it would stand apart from other Triceratopses. But I don't think that the public used that as much as I wanted it to be there. So I think that I asked for a lot of their time and a lot of their investment in that. And that ended up being, I think, a lesson learned, that like, it's hard to tell if anyone used those. And I, as a user, found the experience not to be that easy. And it's definitely not very accessible. So that was part of my elevator pitch that I regret.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. So Elizabeth, this next question is for you. what do you feel the audiences want next from museums and cultural organizations in the augmented reality space?
Ooh, so can you clarify that question a little bit more?
Yeah, what do you feel like audiences want next from museums and cultural organizations in the AR space? Is there any certain technology that you see becoming more prevalent in the near future?
Interesting. I don't know that I can speak for full technology, but I can see already two paths. First is within the museum being able to connect like an augmented reality layer into existing artifacts. And that's something that we'd love to explore with the Smithsonian, so that when visitors go in, they can engage, you know, offline and in the space. And then there's the second piece, which is like making sure that people who cannot go to the museums can have access to part of the content that, they can experience in different ways. I think there might be some interesting things coming up around photogrammetry, the ability to do 3D scanning as this democratizes a little bit as well, with the actual mobile phones. So maybe integrating that as part of the experience to recognize something in 3D and then triggering an AR experience from it. I think that could be a definitely an interesting path. But first and foremost, like making more rich experiences with more rich interactivity and educational purposes behind them, so that it's great, it's engaging, but what is it that you learn, and what is it that is true to the museum experience that you want to get from a user perspective, as well as just things like animation and photorealism technology that are still also developing. I think all of those things are going to be increasingly changing in the next few years, because it all has to depend on this like real-time technology of being able to render that perfectly right away. But yeah, if I can summarize this, it will probably be around like the quality and the richness of the experience are just going to continue to evolve.
That's great, thank you. Robin, Erin, anything to add to that? Any sort of next steps that you think museums and cultural organizations will be doing?
I mean, I think COVID really taught us that like travel is different than it has been in the past, right? Your ability to go places is really different. I don't think anyone has really cracked it yet, exactly what people want, but I do know that people want customization and personalization, and that the nature of sort of social media is changing. So I think augmented reality, where it intersects with social, needs to change. There's much less interest in like broadcasting to everyone, right? People are much more interested in like their group chat, their like smaller groups, their close friends on Instagram. So like experiences that really require that museums really are like share to all your friends. Like people aren't as motivated to do that in most cases. And I think what people do want is sort of a relationship. And I think museums should be invested in that, where it's not just, here is something you can have. It's let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's share your memories. What do you think of this mammoth or whatever? And I think that is like the next step, at least for our effects that we made, is like, let's do that Q&A with the expert, that kind of thing. So I think they want access. I think they want customization. I think they want it to be personal and shareable, but like not in a broadcasty sort of way. And I think a lot of us go there first. So I'm curious what Robin thinks.
Oh man, so it's interesting, as I was watching your presentation, we both sort of had like opposite perspectives, in that the social media viewers are like, oh, I don't want to read a bunch of stuff. And then on our end, we were like, oh, we could include so much extra information. And I think part of that is like the platform, right? Like when you're on Instagram, like you just want to like look at a cool experience. You don't want to like be reading a whole bunch of stuff. But I think there's also a great potential for researchers, at the Smithsonian in particular. It's a huge institution, and there's a lot of interest, for students and scholars to research our collections. And I think that AR provides, and will continue to provide as the technology develops, another avenue for researchers to be able to explore these collections. just because we're able to provide so much more information and sort of explore artifacts in a different way, like provide these really sort of like close looking, like close examination of the object in ways that are, you know, virtually impossible, first of all, if you're not there physically with the object. But also, you know, the 3D, we didn't really, I don't think any of us really talked about this, but the different sort of layers of information that you can capture in the 3D scanning is often a lot more than what even we can just see with our eyes. And as that develops, I think it will be really interesting for researchers as well.
Kind of going off of that, Robin, was there anything that surprised you that really resonated with people that you saw, like when they're actually interacting with those augmented reality experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basically what I just said, that like we've only sort of just scratched the surface of like what we may be able to do with augmented reality.
Yeah.
And especially now with the Smithsonian's open access policies, you know, people can take these models and these experiences and create experiences of their own. And I don't even have the like expertise to begin to even, you know, speculate on what that might look like or what that might be. But I think, you know, folks with the right skill set and sort of the right like creative thought could do some really amazing things with our collections. And I think that was something that I had just never really I didn't realize the capabilities before. As someone coming in not from the like tech side, but more the you know, the curatorial side, it was like eye-opening to be like, wow, there's so many different ways that people can engage with this.
Yeah, I think like we're starting to see that personalization happening, just with the open access project, allowing developers to create new things and just allowing people to sort of get up close and personal. And one of the things that struck me during your presentation that I thought was really cool was just like having the ability to sort of zoom in on that baseball and really examine it from all those different angles and to really inspect all the different autographs. That's something that you can't really get in a museum, which was really, really cool to me. So we have another question from the audience. This one's for Erin. Erin, have you had any success using social media to encourage interactions between people experiencing materials in their own space?
Interesting. I mean, one thing that I was excited to see with these is what would people do with these effects, right? Like how would they make them special in their own environments? And I think what I saw was, here is my pet with the Smithsonian object. And I think that was really cool. It made me think about, you know, if we did have like natural history specimens or something that related to domesticated creatures that you might have in your home, like what could we do with that? Like, you know, is it about like evolution or like the size of different animals compared to each other? Or is it about animal behavior? You know, like, could we do a kind of two-way thing there? And I think that could be really interesting. I don't know exactly how you do it, but I think that would be really kind of cool and odd. There was something that Robin was mentioning that I wanted to tack onto as well, which, so yeah, all the 10 effects that we did with Instagram, those are all from Smithsonian Open Access as well, right? So we could play with them, you know, without fear of some, you know, copyright issue popping up or something like that, but the public can too, right? And so I was a little bit, part of my like side motivation for doing this was just to show like this is possible and the Smithsonian can do it, but you can too. So through Facebook/Instagram, we reached out to the Spark AR creator community, which are like people who make effects for Instagram, some for fun, some for profit, some for both. And like, they're the ones who post like, here's my new like thing where you can have a Medusa head. And, you know, I really wanted those audiences to know that you can take the space shuttle, the, you know, whatever, the shoes from the Wiz, and you can bring them into your effects. You can really modify them. You don't have to show them as this like official artifact, you know, like the way the Smithsonian would do it, right? So I was really motivated to show them that, and being able to just have the Spark AR Instagram accounts say like, hey, these exist. Like, I think that was good. I can't prove that effects were made based on that, but we do sometimes see in the wild, like someone took Charlie Bird Parker's saxophone, made it into like a whole cool thing, and they did music. I was scared to do it because I didn't want to be in a licensing drama, but they added music, and like, this is just a creator who did this. And I think that's what's really exciting. Most of our Instagram audiences are not Spark AR creators. They don't necessarily have the Adobe Aero app, which is a wonderful app. You know, this is a whole new chapter for them that like, it's going to be hard to motivate them to do that kind of thing. But just looking at it, I think kind of sparks your thinking about how can I use this? And I'd love to hear about like how an educator might use that in the classroom or something like that. So yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm curious to see what happens.
So this question is for all of you. I mean, what are some of the challenges, I guess, getting started that museums, this is coming from the audience member, what are some of the primary challenges for museums in developing these AR and VR experiences? We talked kind of, I guess, more specifically about each of the individual problems that maybe and challenges that each of you face, but are there any broad challenges that museums might anticipate when they're developing their own for the first time?
Maybe I can chime in. I talked a little bit about some of the technical constraints we experience. And so beyond that, two other points come to mind. The first one is creating a meaningful AR experience. We have this motto at Adobe with the Aero team when we develop use cases, is always ask like, why AR? Why does this make sense in AR? Would it be easier just to see that on a video or a photo? Like, are we trying to be too, gimmicky, or are we really trying to add value and leverage the AR medium to create something new, something interactive, something that you wouldn't be able to do any other way? And I think that asking ourselves that question is sometimes harder and more challenging, but it helps create something really of better quality. And I think the second thing I would mention too was that we anticipated that, but we were still a bit surprised by how important it is to have a diversity of skill sets to create a really powerful experience, that being, UX skills, design concept skills, art direction skills, potentially like storytelling or sound or music. Like all of these things can be quite specific, and sometimes it's better to have a few experts on the team than just one generalist. And then on top of that, there's all of the, the scientific skills to make, the experience accurate, or the curatorial skills. And so really finding the partnerships with the right group of people and the right team to build a successful experience, I think is super important.
For me, I think that's a really good answer. I think it's finding the intersection of the audience motivation and what you are motivated to do as your organization, right? Like, I think a lot of people would be interested in trying on the Hope Diamond using AR, but are we motivated to make that an effect? Like, does that achieve our educational goals? I don't know. One of my goals is definitely to wear it in real life, but I don't think I'm allowed. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is really like figuring out what do your audiences want and then doing it. And for me, the best way to do it would be as part of a big package where people are excited about that topic, like around a NASA launch, around a big anniversary, around a big movie. You don't know about that opportunity sometimes far enough in advance, and this stuff takes a lot of time to develop. So for me, those are some of the biggest challenges that are like the most fun to try to tackle.
Yeah, I also agree that Elizabeth's response is a lot of what we were thinking about, like which objects are going to be meaningful AR experiences, rather than just like, oh, you might as well just look at a video of this or whatever. But then also from the sort of the collections perspective, a museum perspective, choosing the right objects for the capture was a challenge, because a lot of times we were really excited, like, oh, we really want to feature this particular artifact in the 3D gallery, but there were challenges to being able to do the 3D scan. So for example, all of the objects had to be fully stabilized. And we had a pair of cleats that we really wanted to feature, but we couldn't figure out how to get the the shoelaces to be still when we were doing the capture. So that was something that we had to leave out. Same with things that are like highly reflective, you know, dark, like very dark black objects, things like that. And so, you know, when we started, we came to the DPO with a list of like, oh, this is what we want to include in our AR gallery. And, you know, they sat down with us and told us like what was going to work and what wasn't, just for, you know, step one, like getting that object scanned. And so I think having obviously that kind of expertise to tell us like what is going to actually like come out looking okay in the AR experience was really valuable, because you know, we're thinking about the stories, and you know, we definitely needed the expertise to tell us like, okay, but this is what's actually gonna like look good too. So yeah, it was a challenge, but it was fun to work through.
That's great. So I think we're just about out of time, but we have time for one more question. And this is open to each of you as well. What advice would you give to someone who's interested in creating an augmented reality experience of their own?
I would just say go for it. Like if you have the resources or can find the right place to like point you in the right direction, if you don't have the experience, it's 100% worth trying. I think, as we've all said, there's like there's so much potential. And so if you know, speaking for myself, like I'm certainly not the one to say like what that is, but there's somebody out there who has amazing ideas. And so I think just like go for it, because it was a really, really fantastic experience.
I mean, mine would definitely be incorporate pets into your strategy, and also just really think about that audience motivation. Make sure you have like 17 different ways to motivate people to try it, because I think that is a big hump to go from I'm scrolling on social media or on the internet or whatever to I am doing something. So I would make it part of a multi-touch package. That would be my advice.
Agree with all these points. I would also add that, you know, you can always start simple. You can start with just simple visualizations. You can start with just adding very simple interactivity, and then you can build on top of that once you get a little bit more confidence. So there's really no rules. Like anything can be, you know, super engaging in AR. And in our Aero community, we've seen very different types of artwork or creation or experiences being successful and getting a lot of positive feedback. And sometimes the things that you don't expect to be, you know, very entertaining are because they're funny or because they were just authentic in the first place. So I think like going back to the passion piece and just following your passion and just doing it is probably the best place to start.
That's awesome. Well, everybody, I want to thank you each so very much for participating in this panel. I know I personally got a lot out of it, and I hope our audience did as well. So thanks everyone so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Digitization Conference.